So it's 1 o'clock. We're going to give everybody a minute or so, see if there's anyone else who joins us. We'll give them a minute to arrive and then we'll get started. We are recording and our session will last about 35 minutes or so. Because I have the free version of Zoom and we only get 40 minutes. So, but it's long enough. We'll have a good conversation. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Dana Carey, and I'm part of the admin team for the Facebook group. I teach 8th grade, Math 8 and Algebra 1 in Southwestern Indiana. I heard about building thinking classrooms a little over a year ago and studied and started implementing in August. So I've done it. I did it for the whole school year. I can't say that I did it perfectly by any means. I'm not an expert, but I'm fortunate that my counterpart, the other 8th grade math teacher, did it with me. And so I had someone who I could always go to talk about things and try to figure out solutions along the way. But I like talking about it and hearing how other people did and what worked for them, what didn't work. And so those are some things that I hope we can all share today. So our chapter is chapter 2, which is how we form collaborative groups in a thinking classroom. I'm happy in this next 35 minutes to share what I did, what worked, what didn't work, but I want to give everyone else an opportunity to share, not just me talking. So if anyone wants to get us started, if there's something in the chapter that stood out to you, or maybe something that worked for you with forming groups. I know there's a lot of different programs, a lot of different ways to form the group. Some use cards, someone are playing cards. Some people have used colored cards, popsicle sticks, flippity, but maybe someone would like to share what worked for you. So just jump in. Anyone? Don't be shy.
I have used the popsicle stick before. We're grouping and then just call on students so that I'm not picking on the same students all the time. Sometimes the kids get panicked. They're afraid they're going to get called by using the popsicle stick.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Awesome. So I've done a little bit of everything. I had found Flippity, which is, it's based on Google Sheets. They did have a bit of a breakdown, but someone posted in the group a workaround. And I loved it because it would pair people up or put it in 5 groups or groups of 4 or whatever. So I loved that. What I struggled with Flippity was when it would split up into the groups, it took my roster. So there was never a way to take out the absent kids. And then the kids were calling me on it. I would go up to the board and I'd cross out the absent kids' names because I was projecting it up. And then, you can't help yourself. You know which kids don't work well together. So the groups that I had to like recombine would always end up with more that wasn't random. And the kids would call me out on it. So I found this year I kind of did 2 different things. I did use the cards. I would have my kids come in, sit down, do our little workup routine that our district requires. And then that way I already had a head count and I could pull out the cards that I needed. So I had exactly the number of cards that I needed. That worked well, as long as the kids, I generally would have them go to the groups because mine kept trying to switch. The other app I've used is something called Team Shake, and it's a paid app, but I really like that for my class with my ELLs because I had a large group, so it looks random and it was random, but you could also put people that couldn't be together. So if I had people with 2 BIPs that couldn't be together, I could make sure that they are on opposing teams. And it would randomize it, but it would make sure those 2 wouldn't go together. And conversely, I could make sure that my ELs were with someone that could somewhat translate with them. So that's my experience. They've all worked well, but they do have to be, just like Peter said, at sometimes towards the end with the student teacher, you would pre-make the groups and the kids would be like, well, this isn't random. So it definitely, that visible part in front of the students is very important.
So I haven't done this yet, but I'm thinking that I want to use the cards. I want to do it as they walk in the room and have them sit in their groups because I'm going to have my desks clustered in 3s. And then what I was thinking is I can pull up their seating chart on my iPad on an app that I can write on. And so as they pull their card, I just put it on the seating chart right then. So that eliminates the switching to be with their friend problem, because I've been really noodling around with this for a little while, and it keeps it truly random, like pick a card, and then I also kind of mind the Facebook group for what do I do if a kid is absent. I wind up with a kid by themselves. If you wind up with a kid by themselves, then they go to the next group to their right, or maybe the next number up, the next card number up that has only 2 people. And you set a routine of that's what you do. So you're not picking what group they go to. And that eliminates the, oh, you're putting me with them because you don't want me to be with that person. Well, no, it's because you're a 3 and you're by yourself and there's not an empty spot at 4 or 5. So you're with 6. So setting up that routine ahead of time so that they know, oh, I'm by myself. Neither of my other 2 people are here. So I need to look for the next number that has an empty seat, just so that it makes it more obviously random. And I like that. I like that idea. So I'm going to try that.
I haven't done it yet, but I think there's a lot of there's a comfortable aspect of a student knowing like where their desk is every day, and that they know that this is my space if they needed to have, I don't know. I just feel like some kids need like a specific spot where their stuff is and they know that that's their spot. So my thought was that I might still do the cards as they walk in the room, but that's only for where they're working that day, where they're still going to have like their home base essentially of this is my spot and this is where I go every day.
Yeah, she wants more.
Christy, that's pretty much how I did mine. I needed to have assigned seats. I mean, I knew I was going to be out a lot during the school year, and with substitute teachers, you just kind of have to have those assigned seats. And I started out with groups of 3, but I didn't have enough room at the whiteboards. So I changed my groups to groups of 6, and they had assigned seats. And what I did, I tried the Flippity, and it didn't work for me. It works for a lot of people. And I think that's fantastic. We all just have to find what works for us. Someone said in the elementary group that Class Dojo will do random groups. My counterpart, we use Power School in our corporation, and she used Power School seating charts for her random groups for a while. What I did, because I read a book by Pam Harris. I did a lot of her stuff last summer too. And she said, if you really want to build relationships, know your kids' names before they come into the classroom. So I pulled their pictures from Power School into a Google Slides and printed off cards. And I'd sit there like little flashcards trying to learn names. And when Flippity didn't work the way I wanted, I thought, you know what? I have all these cards with their names on them. And so I used these for my random groups. And so the kids would come in and get their seat and whatever supplies they needed for the day. And if they had to turn something in or whatever. And I would use my cards to take attendance. I'd flip through, okay, this one's absent, set those to the side. And I'd start shuffling the cards, and I'd talk to him about whatever, what we're going to do for the day, or, how their morning was, just, have conversation. And I'd shuffle up the cards, and then I'd pull 3 at a time and lay them out. And okay, you and you're board 1, you're board 2. And so they saw me shuffle and pull the cards right there in front of them. And that worked for me. I think, you just have to see what's going to work for you, and make your classroom flow. For some people, they can have the actual random seats to go with the random groups. And I think that's fantastic. It didn't work for me, and that was okay. I always, when things don't work the way it says in the book, I always go back to where he says, and I've heard Peter say this in sessions that I've been in with him, it's a framework, and you have to have it work for your classroom, for your building, for things you're expected to do as a teacher, because we all have our plates full of all these things we're expected to do. And so, I try not to beat myself up when I can't do it the way the book says to do it. So keep that in mind. It's a framework, and make it work for you. Because there's a lot of ways to do random groups. Anybody want to add anything?
I wanted to kind of step in, and it flows a little bit into the next chapter. I've been rereading the book this summer. One of the presenters that did, it was on Global Math Department, and it was a recorded seminar I listened to last week. He let his students come in and sit kind of with their friends, and that was their little social minute while he took his attendance and did the housekeeping. And then when we go into the next chapter and Peter starts talking about how to give tasks, he didn't randomize his groups until after the task was given. And in some ways, I like that, because the kids know the studio student. So if they already know that they're with a kid that'll pay attention, then they're less likely to pay attention. So I kind of like the idea of randomizing after the task is given verbally, so that they're all, more of them are paying attention, because they don't know who they're going to be with. And I completely agree, Dana. Everything is a starting off point. And according to his research, he went through so many different classes to find the best across that would work in all types of situations. But your students best, your district best. And you can start with the best practice for everyone, but you may be able to tweak it a little bit. That's the best practice for you.
Okay. Well, I thought we would look at the questions to think about. The thing that I found the most challenging, and it kind of comes up with the, what is the worst combination of students that can come together in random groups? And I think I had some of that this last year, because, we always have that one kid, and not just in one class, but like every class seems to have that one kid that you can't put with this person, you can't put with that person. And so what would maybe an experience you have, or maybe Mary, maybe something you're like worried that's going to happen, when you try to do your groups, what are some of those things that go through your mind when you think about, I'm going to make these groups, and what if I have that one kid? Any thoughts? So like, how do you see yourself accommodating the class for that one kid? And I say that because I had one class where I had a student who had a lot of anxiety issues, and she wouldn't go to the board at all. And on occasion, because I had her stepsister in that class with her, she would go if she was grouped with her stepsister. But then that posed the issue of, is it fair to the stepsister that she always gets put with her stepsister, because she needs to be with other kids than just the stepsister. And then I had another class where I had a student who was not capable of fostering good peer relationships. And just was constantly making bad choices with peers. And so because of that, I had several students in the class I could not group that student with. And so how would you get around, how would you accommodate with your process those types of students? Have you thought any about that? Or maybe that's the first time, it's like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. How am I going to fix that? How am I going to group that?
I also think there's a third type of student, which is the type of student that no one wants to work with.
Mm-hmm. That
what
was
do you do
mine.
with that one?
Yeah. That was mine. No one wanted to be in a group with that kid because he was obnoxious. I'll just be honest. And so it was really tough. I had to, when I was pulling the cards and I got that student, first I had to look at, okay, who's with that student? And then I had to look at who's going to be at a board next to that student. And if the grouping was okay, I didn't have an issue switching the group locations. That wasn't a big deal. But when the group was wrong, I had to make some moves. But as the year went on, it got harder and harder because he caused more and more issues with more and more students in the classroom. And so it really became difficult to make groups in that class.
How did the rest of the students handle when you would make adjustments to the group?
They were okay with it because they didn't want to be in a group with him and they didn't want to be next to him. And I think they knew I was doing my best to accommodate. But he was just one of those kids that I don't even know how to say it. And Unfortunately, he would tend to get grouped with a few of the same kids because those were the only kids who could manage to work with him. Is how it ended up turning out. And then he got into enough trouble that he was no longer at school.
I actually had two in the same class that were like that this year. It got to the last 9 weeks and the principal set it up so they were in suspension during my class time, so that I didn't have to deal with them and that none of the other students had to deal with them. Because they would even say if they were absent that day, they look, our class is so nice that's without them here. And it's a shame that that's the way it is. And I feel bad because both of the students were capable of learning and capable of the work. They were just so defiant and obnoxious that they refused to do it. And I was a completely different teacher when they were there and when they weren't there. It threw my whole day off when they would start that.
Yes, it does. Can you think of some students who would benefit from having random groups?
Absolutely. I know it's not uncommon, but in so many of my groups, the same 4, 5, 6 kids, depending on the size of the class, always wanted to work together. And there's always so much to learn from others, not just content wise, but peer wise. It would surprise me who didn't know each other and they'd grown up, been in the same school for 9 years and they still didn't really know each other.
I did a survey at the end of the school year to try to get a feel what kids thought about the whole building thinking classrooms process that we did. And I was pleasantly surprised at the number of kids who said that it helped them be better socially, and that it helped them come out of their shell and talk to kids that they wouldn't have normally talked to and get to know kids they wouldn't have normally got to know. And that's what we want, right? As part of the process. And so I was really glad to see that. And, you pick up on those kids as you go through the process. Those of you who've done it know and what I mean. And those of you who are getting ready to, you'll see it. You'll know, you'll see those kids who, boy, this is really uncomfortable for them, but they're doing it. And that's cool to watch happen. Because they're going to get in groups with kids that they don't know. They don't know these kids. And they're forced to get to know them, at least talk about math anyway. But we talked about, my counterpart and I talked about this year when we do the week of inspirational math at the beginning of the school year with the non-curricular tasks. And we talked about when we get them to the board to do the groups, just doing a little icebreaker thing so they can, say your name because they're not going to know each other's names. And so we'll go around the room, say your name, and then, I don't know, just something as easy as, what's your favorite movie? Just a little something about that person, just to help them get to know each other and start that process of the building thinking classroom. So anybody want to add to?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. So that's something that I did this year, was whenever I would randomize them as they came in, like I would just give them some question, and I'd give every single class the same question. And like there are like websites and books of like 1,000 like icebreaker questions that you can ask and stuff. One thing that I wanted to change this year moving forward is to ask like more reflective questions about like my processes or like my teaching practices. Like, why do you think Mr. Ray is putting you into random groups? Or like, what are the benefits of being in a random group? Or like something like that, to get them thinking about like, oh, wait, hold on, wait, why are we doing this? And like get that discussion out there where I can start to kind of like justify my practices. Again, this is something that I'm thinking about. I'm not sure if this is, I don't think that this is something that I want to do right at the beginning of the year. I want to create some buy-in and say, this is how we're doing it. It's not a democracy where y'all are going to vote whether we're doing random groups or not. But like I wanted to kind of like, after doing it for a bit, I think he talks about doing that with like the how we answer questions of like, I'm going to do it this way. And then later on, we're going to talk about why. And like that creates even more buy-in, possibly. So I thought that's a good idea to like start with like simple icebreaker questions. Yeah, you want to add to that? Yeah. Oh, I think she was waving goodbye. Okay, never mind. not raising her hand. Anyway.
I really like that idea of attaching it to the why and having the discussions, because I think when we know our why, it's easier to maybe do the buy-in or be motivated by it. So I think that's a great idea. The part that I'm new to this thinking classroom, but not new to using multiple different ways of teaching math. And the part that I still struggle with is that I think happens in groups is that students don't always listen to each other and don't always value what someone else might have said if they do not perceive that other person as having math status. And so in this random grouping, how are you building the status of everybody? You know, what is the work of the teacher to facilitate that? When you do complex instruction, you're noticing what students are doing that's authentic, that's building either their identity or their skill. So I don't know how you can support random groupings with that, of noticing, oh, what were the strengths of this group? What did we each bring out? You know, is there a discussion of that at the end of a task where you say what worked for the group and what didn't?
I think that that's what I want to add this year is like, because that gets into a lot of like which chapter is it where it's like evaluating what we value. I haven't implemented that yet, but like I did notice that this past year with just implementing like the first 1 or 2 toolkits where I'm just like getting to the end of the task and I see like there are some groups that work well together, some groups that don't. And like maybe we have a discussion or two here and there about like what good group work looks like. But like I wasn't able to like have them critically like think about how they are actively doing in class on a consistent basis of like, am I sharing my ideas? Am I like listening to others' ideas? Like, am I doing all of these things that I should be doing? Or really just like, I wasn't good at consistently communicating to them that that's what I wanted them to do. And so I think that gets into like how we evaluate, and like he calls it evaluating what you value. But like I want to do more of that because I did see, like you said, that's like an area where it's like, it's an area of concern because it's like, okay, yeah, we're switching them up, but there are a lot of important things to do to make sure that they're like building like inter-student confidence in a way, like confidence in each other. But yeah.
There's a book, I'm an elementary school teacher, so I have kind of that mindset when I do things, but one of the first things that I do I do it on the second day of school, is there's a book called The Magical Yet. I don't know, it's a picture book, and I don't know what kind of place that has in the middle school classroom, but it's called The Magical Yet, and it talks about a little girl who is wanting to learn how to ride her bike and she can't do it yet. And so we just talk about how everybody has their own, and in the book it talks about how everybody has their own yet, that is like a little mythical creature that, you know, follows them around. And I do that. And then I also, because I only teach math, I do, there was a workshop that I did a couple of summers ago where the person that was doing it used the great reference of Kobe Bryant, and that even though there's this picture that she used of the shots that he took on the basket, of all the shots that out of all the shots he took, he missed 55% of the shots that he took during his games. And that even though he missed more than he made, he's still considered to be one of the greatest basketball players of all times. And so I really, like when y'all were both talking, I really just feel like those are things that I feel like can carry over into any grade level, because they're relevant and they're meaningful for any student of any age. And so just kind of, I always am constantly reminding the kids that everybody's yet is different. And in the Kobe Bryant reference, she talks about how everybody has purple days and everybody has gold days. And so when a student is really struggling, I constantly am saying, are you having a purple day or a gold day? And a purple day is a great day, and a gold day, which I know sounds backwards, but it's just the way it was in the graphic. And that just because you might be having a gold day, which is not a great day, doesn't mean that tomorrow you're not going to have a purple day. And so that everybody's days are different. And so what I do is I have the kids tell me whether they felt like, do some self-reflection of whether they had a purple day or a gold day. And it's really meaningful to them, and they can tell me why, or they don't have to tell me why, but it's meaningful to them because they get to reflect, and then I can take that and I can reflect over what I saw and what I observed and what might have made that a gold or purple day for them. So I know that is not anything with building thinking classrooms, but as y'all were talking, I really feel like some of that is how you build your classroom culture, and that has to start from day one. And so what types of ideas could I give you guys of how you can build that classroom culture from day one, as well as how it would tie into this? So that's just, sorry, I know that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it just came to my mind when y'all were talking.
Thank you, Christy. I think it has everything to do with what we're talking about. I feel that there's sometimes when I'm working with teachers, there's a forget that we have to explicitly teach some skills in order to work. There's an assumption that, oh, we all know how to work together. And we know that's not true. It's not true for adults. It's not true for kids. And sometimes I think I used to teach preschool, and that's what we worked on, is how do we get along? And I sometimes I think we forget to teach those skills. And I love that idea of the magical yet. So thank you.
It's such a good book. I just found it 2 years ago, and it's such a good book. And I feel like it really paints a picture for them that is, your yet is there. You have that yet with you all the time. And your yet is not anybody else's yet, and that's okay. So thank you. It's kind of, I'm like sitting here and I'm like, oh, the magical yet. And then I'm like, but that has nothing to do with it. And it does. And you're exactly right. And I moved from 2nd grade to 5th grade. And part of the reason why my principal moved me from 2nd grade to 5th grade is because even though they're 10 and 11 years old, they're still a kid. And I think sometimes with our curriculum and the rigor that they want us to do, the upper people, that we forget that at the heart of them, they're still kids. And even in the middle school and high school, they're still just a kid. So.
Right. I think what you'll find is when you start the school year and if you start with those non-curricular tasks, and maybe you do them for a couple of days, that's when you stop and say, okay, so let's talk about how our group work is going. What does good group work look like? And you help develop those norms with your students about what good group work looks like. This is, and I think it's in the book, there's the T chart. It goes back to what you said about evaluating what we want, which is chapter 12. And we just had a session on that yesterday with Don Newman, and the videos posted in the events. But and and listing, okay, this is what this part of good group work looks like, and this is what the bad part looks like. And, you know, giving both sides of what good group work looks like. Sorry, I didn't want to forget the time. That's a good discussion that needs to happen in that first week, so that students know your expectations, because they're not going to behave the way we want if we don't tell them and we don't teach them. So that's really important. We've got just a couple of minutes, because I do have the free version of Zoom. And so we're running to the end of our time. Does anyone have any last thoughts they would like to share?
Yeah, so I just, in the more recent conversations we've been having about like teaching students what like all of this looks like, and like the concerns about like what if how do you get students to actually listen to each other and all of that. I was looking through the Q&A, and on page 53 there is a question that's I'm worried what will happen when a weaker student ends up with the same group with the stronger student. Won't that weaker student get excluded or marginalized? And there's a really long, in-depth answer here, but the main thing that I pulled from it was random groups, like it just creates a field of creates a place for empathy to grow. Like if they're not put into random groups, or if they're put into strategic groups of some sort, like there's not going to be a place for their empathy to grow. Like it could not grow, but like at the same time, like it kind of forces it to a little bit, like because you're gonna be in a group with somebody. And anyway, that whole answer is really good, but it says it puts empathy into motion, and it gives a venue for it to play out in. And I thought that was really good. It's just kind of like setting the stage for all of these good things that we want to happen. So
Yeah, no, thank you for pointing that out. That's fantastic.
I put the link to the Magical Yet on Amazon, and I also noticed that there's a YouTube video of it as well, of a read aloud. I haven't looked at it to validate if it's appropriate or not, but I just thought I'd put that in there for you.
Okay. Thank you, Christy. Well, I think we're about out of time. I have another session at 2 o'clock. If you want to come back, it's the high school session, but anyone's welcome. And I really appreciate everybody coming out. I think we had a great conversation, and I'll get the video posted this evening. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.